Hi, my name is Taylor Sharpenshay, and this is a presentation of my lesson 1 for the unit plan that I have presented for Counseling 501. Within this lesson plan, we will be discussing anger management. I have chosen anger management as my presentation topic for my lesson plan, as my 3 lesson plans center around bullying, conflict resolution, and inevitably anger management. My target audience is 3rd to 6th graders. It is an evidence-based lesson plan, which has the highest level of evidence, results published in peer-reviewed journals, and it is a single classroom lesson. Within this lesson plan, the codes that I have followed are BSMS1, which is the responsibility of self and actions, and BSMS2, which is self-discipline and self-control. For BSMS1, the student objective is that they will complete a worksheet that allows them to understand anger as an emotion and how their actions can affect not only themselves but others as well. And in accordance with BSMS2, the students will continue the worksheet and collaborate with each other to create other alternatives for how to react when they begin to feel angry. The purpose of this lesson is for students to be able to better understand what anger is and how to better control themselves and the way that they react whenever they can feel anger coming on. The materials needed for this lesson were a worksheet and a PowerPoint. The PowerPoint was an informational guide for these students so that they could begin to better understand the topic, and the worksheet was an activity to ground them so that we can understand together if the students were comprehending the material. We would also need a white paper roll, glitter, stickers, markers, tape, and anything else that the students may have provided to me that they were interested in using, as so that they can use this as an alternatives board at the end of our activity, which we'll get a little bit more into in a moment. To introduce this lesson, topic, or focus, I would begin by saying, what is anger? I would want students to identify what they believe anger is, what makes them feel angry. The beginning of our worksheet would include these topics. How does this affect us? And in turn, how does it hurt others? Whenever we feel angry, how can we react in a better way that may be a little bit healthier so that we can begin to process our emotions in a more comprehensible way? How can we work together to better understand this emotion? To work together to better understand this emotion is where I would like our alternatives board to come in so that we can understand when we are feeling angry, what are some things that can ground us, that can bring in a little bit of a happier insight. To communicate this lesson objective, I would begin by saying that this activity will be used to educate our students on the more effective ways that we can process our emotions, and in this lesson, we will work specifically with anger. This activity will allow the students to better understand that we can process our emotions in a healthy way. We will not affect ourselves or others in a negative manner. In order to teach this content, we will begin by completing the first half of our worksheet to explain what makes each student feel angry so that they can better understand what the root issue is. The students will then describe how they react when feeling this emotion and how that may affect others around them. We will then collaborate as a class to create alternative reactions when we may begin to feel this emotion. This lesson was conceived and collaborated through Teachers Pay Teachers, a resource that my practicum site manager did allow me to research. This is something that she collaborates with quite often and said that it's one of the most helpful tools that she finds in the counseling system, which is why she recommended it to me for this project. In order for students to practice the content after we do communicate the objective and teach the content, the students will write the list of alternatives to be displayed in the classroom. I would advise each student to write 1 to 3 alternatives, pick the one that they like the most, and then write it on their alternatives board for each classroom to then display inside the walls of their classroom to better ground the students whenever they do feel that emotion of anger while at school. As it being displayed in the classroom, in the event that a student may become upset or angry, they can remind themselves of the alternatives and find some grounding in these options. To summarize and close my lesson with all of these students, the students will then decorate the alternative signs with things that make them feel happy, which is where the glitter, stickers, markers, drawings, anything that these students would do to make them feel better. This would create a positive atmosphere between the students and their classroom. I believe that it would also attest to a lot of the social dynamic within the classroom as well, especially whenever students can collaborate with each other. Then maybe they can start seeing those signs of when other students are starting to feel angry, and I think that it would bring out a helping hand in a lot of them. The anticipated number for the students that I would plan to be working with is about 20. This is a number that is based off of the intended school that I will be continuing my practicum with in the next semester, which is St. Genevieve Catholic School. The planned length of this specific activity and lesson is going to be about 30 to 45 minutes. I would plan to use the first 15 minutes to really understand what anger means to these students and what makes them feel angry. I would plan to use the next 10 to 15 to start thinking of some alternatives with these students of what they can do to better effectively process their emotions. And then in the last 5 to 10 would be when the students would come and they would decorate their board in the best way they knew how. I would then leave it to the teacher's discretion whether or not she would allow these students to keep working on the alternatives board before hanging it in the classroom, or if each student would only be allowed to write their alternative and then add one piece of something that makes them feel happy. This would also be a way to be able to let the teacher collaborate with us as well. I would allow the teacher to also add an alternative of her own of what she can do that makes her feel better whenever she is feeling this emotion, to also allow the students to feel a little bit more comfortable with her so that maybe when they are feeling angry, they can talk to their teacher in a bit of confidence. As far as the ASCA Student Standards Data Plan, I have decided on 3 of these pre and post assessment items. One being outcome data, the second being perception data, and the third and final being a follow-up. For our outcome data, I will follow along with the reports of outbursts on an individual level with each student before and after the lesson to conduct and collect outcome data for this lesson. In the event after this lesson, if we have seen a spike in one of the students, I would be interested in meeting with that student specifically, just to really understand what's going on there. But I feel as though that if I look into this data beforehand and then also after, collaborating with this data and collecting it for an outcome would be very beneficial in sharing with our stakeholders at the end of the semester or school year. For the perception data, I will conduct a school climate survey to determine if the school climate has changed to a more positive or to a negative climate. I'm fully aware that any lesson that I can give may not always go the way that I plan, and I fully plan on collaborating with my student body to better understand if what I'm doing is working or if what I'm doing needs to be changed. I want to work with these students, not against them, and I think that they have a lot to tell us about what works and what doesn't, and I think that collaborating with them is probably one of the best forms of research that we can do, and it's probably going to be the most beneficial bit of data that we'll receive. As far as a follow-up, I will meet with the children who continue to have a high number of office referrals due to classroom outbursts. I will also include parent informational notes to be sent home on an individual need of these students. I fully understand that sometimes these students in this age group, they can just have tantrums. However, a spike in some of these outbursts can have an underlying meaning, and I would like to help get to the bottom of it with the permission of the parents, and also send home some helpful and informational tools for these parents to better assist their children at home whenever they are having these tantrums or outbursts. And as far as an outcome data plan, I do plan on seeing a discipline outcome. I plan to monitor the conduct charts and amounts of write-ups for each class to be compared to data that was collected before the conducted lesson. I believe that in doing this, I can understand if my lesson did help or hurt these students. It also may just kind of be a medium through these students and may just bring some awareness, but not some real change. And as far as my follow-up plans, I plan to give extra worksheets to the teacher to be put in the student's take-home and makeup work in the event that a student is unable to attend the lesson. I will also leave space on the alternative sheet that will be presented in the classroom in order for these students, after completing the worksheet from home as homework, that they would be able to add to the alternative sheet if wanted. This just leaves the option open to all students so that they can all collaborate with their classmates even though they weren't there for the lesson at hand. And to explain my plan for students who did not demonstrate mastery on the pre or post assessment of student standards. I do plan to pull these students aside, as I said before, on a more personal level to have a further discussion on this topic. I also plan on sending letters home to the parents showing my concern for these students and what they may be expressing or going through. This would just really help to explain to the parents the struggle or the resistance in the lesson that we were teaching that these students may be having on a day-to-day basis in the classroom as well. As I said before, this is the lesson 1 of 3. My lessons included a lesson on anger management, bullying, and conflict resolution, which I do believe all goes hand in hand with one another. I think that these are 3 of the most important lessons to be taught in the school classroom, as it is a way for us to first feel the anger that we are, and then in turn, if we have conflict resolution or bullying in the future, we can better process these emotions and understand what other people are feeling. And other than that, I hope that you enjoyed this lesson, and I hope that you enjoy the other lessons that you do read through in my unit plan. And thank you so much for listening.